Well, hello folks, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, back for another episode of the Jeffrey Daugherty Show. Got some very interesting and very exciting things to talk about with you today. It's been quite a whirlwind of the past few weeks, being on Coast to Coast AM, being on several shows, getting tons and tons of feedback from listeners, readers, etc. as the book gets out there. And I'd like to thank the many of you that have purchased Apostle Paul Antichrist. I want to talk a little bit about that today, but I just wanted to address something from the beginning. And if you'd like to contact me, you can go to www.IamNCK, N like in new, C like in cosmic, K like is in knowledge, IamNCK.com. You can also go to ApostlePaulAntichrist.com. And you can email me directly at Jeffrey@IamNCK.com. Also on Twitter under NC Kabbalah, and at Facebook under Jeff A. Daugherty and the Jeff Daugherty Show. So lots of ways for you to contact me, so don't hesitate. If you have a comment, if you have a question, and even if you have a suggestion, or even if you have a complaint. I'm not sure that you'll get any satisfaction on your complaint, but I do at least read it. At least at this point I read all the emails and I address it. It's starting to become difficult, but I am still personally reading every single email that you send. And remember, we do have the Create Yourself. We are able to help you reach your full spiritual, physical, and emotional potential. And on tomorrow, I have a new book coming out, an ebook called The Spiritual Wisdom of Napoleon Hill as Gleaned from Think and Grow Rich. And I tell you what, I'm going to sell it for less than $4, and it will be a much better investment than your Starbucks this week. And folks, get that little booklet, read through it. It's going to be a perfect thing to have as a devotional, to go and read on a daily basis, to read when you feel like you need some encouragement, to read when you feel like you need to get some oomph to get your goals fired up, because it's from the best business book ever written, but it is the spiritual principles of Napoleon Hill pulled from Think and Grow Rich, with no commentary from me really, just putting it together. And this is a guy that wrote back in the 30s, and he is the grandfather of the self-help movement. Probably more fortunes have been made by reading his books than anyone else, but there's things that we've missed all these years. They're great spiritual treasures and diamonds from Napoleon Hill. So that'll be available tomorrow, the Spiritual Wisdom of Napoleon Hill as Gleaned from Think and Grow Rich, by yours truly, Jeffrey Daugherty. Less than $4. You're going to want to grab that for sure. Now, I've received a lot of, I was going to say flack, but I've received a lot of encouragement, a lot of interested discussion, and a lot of flack from people about the teaching that I put out a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, about good versus evil. And it's amazing how things work in synchronicity, because I just picked up a new book by Napoleon Hill, have been reading it. It's called Outwitting the Devil. Talks exactly about what I'm talking about with the good versus evil. I heard a fellow on Coast to Coast, and I don't know why I have a mental block on his name. Spoke with him afterwards, and he gave me a great technique that's on the website in dealing with spiritual entities. But basically, the thing that's got everybody upset with me on this is I've basically stated that there's no demons, devils, jinn, etc. And the things that come to us are not demons, they're not devils, they're just unbalanced energy. Now, of course, you're not arguing against me alone if you disagree with this, and you have every right to disagree with it. But you're not arguing against me alone, you're arguing against everything that we have learned up to date in science. We know that everything's energy. This glass is energy. The water in this glass is energy. The guy drinking the water that's in the glass is energy. Everything is energy. You're an energetic being. And the demons, the devils, the jinn, whatever you call them, that come against you are energetic beings. And I use the term being loosely because most of the time it's not a being. It's just a mass or a collection of unbalanced energy. What I mean is, when something comes to you that you think is a demon, and I know this is very, very sensitive and it gets very, very personal because I'm telling people that things that they think are happening aren't really happening. They are happening. You just don't understand what's happening, and I'm trying to help you with this. For 20 years, it was my job to cast out demons. I was a Pentecostal evangelist. My specialties was getting people saved, quote unquote, healing, and exorcism. And I did this for 20 years. I have rebuked spirits that made guys levitate up to 6 feet high. I have cast out devils that made people talk with different voices and throw themselves over into fires. I've done it. And I'm telling you, there's a better way. How do I know there's a better way? Because I still, to this day, work in the realms of exorcism. The folks that I work with from a Christian background will say that we are dealing with demons. The folks that work from a non-church background, they'll talk about we're dealing with devils. Those that come from an Islamic background will talk about the jinn. And I'm not saying that there's absolutely positively no evil spirit, no beings that are of spiritual nature that are against us. But there's very, 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 very few. There really are. It's just like when I was a Pentecostal evangelist, everybody'd say, "Oh, Brother Jeff, I'm battling with Satan." And I would say, no, you are not battling with Satan. In fact, if there is a Satan, he probably doesn't even know who you are. Now, one of his associates, I used to say at that time, probably knows who you are, but no, you're not battling with Satan. And similarly, well, just like that, we are not dealing with demons, except in extremely rare cases. We're not, and sometimes we deal with, entities that are of another place and time, and that's the rare. We can talk about the rare, but let's talk about the everyday rubber meets the road kind of stuff that I'm constantly bombarded in a good way with from people. And folks, I don't know why it upsets some of you so much that I say there's no demons. I don't know why it upsets some of you so much that I say there's no devils. I don't know why it upsets some of you so much when I say that there's no good and evil, just balanced and unbalanced energy. It's like taking a pacifier from a baby and listening to the wails that follow. I know that's inflammatory, but that's exactly what's going on. Someone with experience is sharing with you a technique that is a vast improvement upon what we've been doing for 2,000 years that hasn't worked. And if you don't want to do what I'm sharing with you, great. Keep doing it your own way, and let me just ask you, how's that working for you? The demons, the devils, what you think are demons or devils are just unbalanced energy. Well, Jeff, why do they look like a demon? Why do they look like a devil? Well, for the most reason they look like a demon or they look like a devil is that they're trying to scare you so you will not lead them back into balance. The unbalanced energy, if it's unbalanced, if it's out there by itself long enough, and I'm doing another ebook on this, it'll be available in a couple of 3 weeks. If that energy is out there long enough, and it's getting fed enough by the fears and intentions of people, it can take on some personality-esque type of traits. But it's not a personality. It's just unbalanced energy. And a lot of times it wants to scare you to prevent you from rebalancing it. Because if anyone or anything can keep you in fear and can keep you fighting, it can keep you bound and perpetuate its existence. So one of the main reasons they look like demons when they come back to us is because the vast majority of the things we deal with of spiritual nature are energy that we ourselves have unbalanced through our actions in the past of this life and in lives from the past. Did you hear what I said? The vast majority of what you deal with is unbalanced energy that you yourself unbalanced, either in this life or in past lives. It's a much easier way to say it and to understand it. So when it comes back to you, it can present and manifest a personality or a scary facade that is geared to scare you, because it came from you. You're the one that unbalanced it in the first place. And when it comes home, when the chickens come home to roost, they know what cock-a-doodle-doo to sing to kind of upset you and keep you from rebalancing that energy. And as long as you refuse to accept the reality that it's unbalanced energy, you will continue to be in fear. And when you are afraid, you cannot make spiritual progress. And in fact, you will regress spiritually. When you are in fear, you cannot progress spiritually. And in fact, you will regress spiritually. I encourage you to get the book Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. It was written in 1938, but it is made for today. And he actually talks to the devil, and this devil says that he is unbalanced energy. I didn't make this stuff up, folks. And I did that teaching before I read the book. It's called Synchronicity. It's funny, I came out with the Apostle Paul Antichrist and then found out that Thomas Jefferson said the same thing. So it's nice not to be the only crazy guy around, and it's nice to know that you have people of some credibility like Thomas Jefferson, Napoleon Hill, backing you up, so to speak. But it is just unbalanced energy. And when you quit fearing it, if you realize it's unbalanced energy, there's nothing to fear. It's just energy. You're not afraid of energy because you know it's just energy. So that removes that fear. And the other way to keep us from making any progress is to keep us fighting. Because if you are fighting, you cannot be growing. Because what you resist will always persist. That is a fact. I didn't like it when I heard it, but I got tired of fighting it and realized it was true. And as long as you fight something, as long as you resist it, it will continue to persist and it will continue to perpetuate. Thus, another reason why it wants to manifest to you as something scary. So you will automatically, reflexively fight it. Don't do it. It's not going to help the situation. It's going to perpetuate the situation. And if you don't believe me, keep doing it your way. And again, how's your way working for you? You say I'm crazy, but a guy a lot smarter than me named Einstein said that the definition of crazy, and this just came into my mind, you know, Forrest Gump might have said, crazy is as crazy does. And Albert Einstein said, crazy is doing the same things that you've always done and expecting different results. And I might add to that, if I may, crazier is doing the same things that people have been doing for 2,000 years that haven't worked, and all of a sudden expecting them to work. And again, as Forrest Gump might say, crazy is as crazy does. Don't shoot the messenger. But at any rate, if you just rebalance that energy, if you flood it, you don't fight it, you don't fear it, you identify it as unbalanced energy. You don't fight it, you flood it with balanced energy. And I got a great email today that said, Jeff, it makes sense, but tell me, how do I balance energy? How do I flood it with good energy? How do I flood it with balanced energy so it'll come back into balance? That's what you do. You don't fight the negative, unbalanced energy. You flood it with balanced energy, which causes it to rephase back into harmony. It's no longer a problem to you, no longer a problem to the universe. You can find the video that I did on this on YouTube. It's under No More Good versus Evil. There's also a small article on imnck.com under the paranormal section, third article down, that deals with this in a written fashion. And of course, you can refer back to this video that we're making today for the Jeffrey Daugherty show. So you don't fear it because you know it's energy. You don't fight it because you know if you resist it, it will persist. You flood it with balanced energy. How do you do that? I've always taught that there's no silver bullet in spirituality. You just have to learn, practice, do it over and over again, learn, practice, learn, practice, learn, practice, become more proficient. I almost hesitate to say this and expound this because it is a silver bullet, and it might cause people to use it as a shortcut rather than seeking to move into deeper spirituality. But the best way, and this is an answer to your question, I wish I could remember your name. I'm sorry, I've fielded about 1,500 emails in the last 2 weeks, and don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I hope to continue to answer that many emails every 2 weeks. But the way to flood it with positive energy, the way to flood it with balanced energy, the best technique I've ever found, and this is what I heard from the fellow on Coast to Coast, and he expanded upon it in discussion, and I have tried it, used it, and it is incredibly proficient, and it's been used for thousands of years across many cultures, and it's called the hue or the you. The way when you identify that there's something coming against you, let's say that you see a big hairy black thing that you in the past would have called a demon, and right away you say, you know what, that is not a demon, it is unbalanced energy. I will not fear it. You don't have to close your eyes, but I won't fear it. And then you resist that I rebuke you in the name of Jesus urge. The fighting, that's how Pentecostals fight demons right there. And I just spilled water on myself, but it's out of camera range, so we won't worry. And then you say, okay, I'm not going to fight it. Let me just flood it with balanced energy. What's the best way to do it? Well, there's a technique called the hue, which creates a frequency of balance and projects it around you, acts as a force field, and acts as a recalibration vibration to unbalanced energy. Sounds weird, looks kind of weird, but it works. So you can use it if you want, or you can use it if you don't, or you don't have to use it if you don't want. But I know that it does work, and very simply, here comes the big ugly thing. I don't fear it. I know it's not a demon. I'm not going to fight it, but I'm going to flood it with balanced energy. So what am I going to do? I'm going to use the hue. I'm going to use it just like this. Hue. 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 And some of you felt that peace and balance that comes in, and that is it right there. It's just that simple, and it's just that effective. It works. Don't ask me why or how. I mean, I could actually, it does vibrate up in through your third eye and your crown chakra, and it creates a harmonic resonance that vibrates at that high level, and even some of the higher chakras that we won't go into, and it makes it impossible for anything that is unbalanced to remain in your vicinity, and most of the time is going to cause it to be recalibrated and balanced, again being of no danger to you and of no more upset to the universe. And you know what, let me just ask you this, what do you have to lose? The next time it happens to you, if it does, and hopefully, darn it, I spilled that water again, hopefully it won't, but try it. Before you go into the I rebuke you part, just do a hue. Hue. See what happens. Try it. You'll like it. The proof's in the pudding, and in every other cliche that I can think of. Get the book Outwitting the Devil by W. Clement Stone. W. Clement Stone was another great self-help writer that was a contemporary and a partner in many cases with Napoleon Hill, but Napoleon Hill wrote Outwitting the Devil, and I wrote The Spiritual Wisdom of Napoleon Hill as gleaned from Think and Grow Rich. That'll be available tomorrow on my website and on Amazon. My website, www.imnck.com, and we'll put it on the Amazon Kindle site as well. So feel free to go ahead and go to those places and avail yourself of it. Now, we need to talk about Apostle Paul Antichrist. You know, I've been on Coast to Coast. I've been on, I was on Black Tower Radio 2 nights ago during drive time in Rochester, New York. Several shows coming up, including some television appearances with big names that you're going to be very excited about as soon as I have them confirmed and am able to let you know about them. And also, we've got the NCK tour coming up. We're going to kick that off by August. Still looking for an RV. If you have one, if you know of one, if you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation, or if you'd like to give us a really good deal, let me know. You can notify me on my websites, by my emails. You could even call me, East Coast, United States of America, 407-968-2891. I won't give that out too many times because I don't want, you know, a ton of phone calls at crazy times. But, boy, I don't know if that's going to sit there or not. But we need to talk a little bit about Apostle Paul Antichrist, because we've been doing a lot of appearances about it. And, you know, invariably we get into so much discussion about other peripheral areas, which is important, but we don't ever really get to the message of the book. And the message of the book, very simply, is it's probably the most important book written about the life and times of Jesus since the Bible. It's just that simple. This is the book. It's Apostle Paul Antichrist. Beautiful cover, done by Scotty Roberts of Ancient Aliens. Coast to Coast AM guest several times. A good friend of mine, he designed that. You see the endorsement here by George Norrie. Believe it or not, he said, Daugherty, what's it say? Daugherty delivers innovation, talent, and bravery. He wrote the foreword for the book as well. And just to talk about what this book is all about, what's the message of this book? Well, the message of this book is pretty simple. The teachings of Jesus were hijacked to create a religion and a control matrix based on fear and control. The message of Jesus was hijacked and used to create a matrix of fear and control. It affects us spiritually. It affects us emotionally. It affects us in a socio-political way, and it even affects us right down to something as commonplace and everyday as gender roles and even sexuality. I mean, one book covers all of that and shows you, in addition, the origins of the New World Order. It really does. Shows you how the message of Jesus was hijacked to create a religion and a control matrix based on fear and control. Is responsible for 2,000 years of oppression against females and blatant suppression of the divine, sacred feminine that has wreaked untold havoc across all of society, and also shows you the origins of the New World Order, all in 354 pages. And I feel like I want to go through this and give you the teaching of it. Obviously, we're not going to do it all in this broadcast, but we want you to be able to understand. And the book, a lot of people are surprised when they pick up the book. You read George Norrie's foreword. You read the prologue, which is, you know, I won't read that because that kind of sets up the whole story. And then chapter 1 starts off, the first sentence is, Alexander the Great was enjoying the ride, basking in the warmth of the sun on his face. And somebody asked, what in the world does Alexander the Great have to do with Apostle Paul Antichrist? Well, see, that's the things that we don't understand. And the reason why that we're still victimized by them is because we don't understand them. What was going on with Alexander the Great? The New World Order that we live under today had its genesis in Alexander the Great. I got to quit leaning up. I'm getting excited. The religious oppression that we face today had its beginning with Alexander the Great. The oppression of women and the divine sacred feminine had its beginning with Alexander the Great. How? Why could that possibly be? Well, at the beginning of my book and at the beginning of this story, Alexander the Great was on his way to conquer Egypt, which of course he did. And on the way to Egypt, he was going to go ahead and take care of this noisome pestilence, this scrappy little nation that was a thorn in many a king's side before him. And that little nation was called Israel. And Apollo, where did that come from? I almost said Apollo Creed. I don't know where that came from. I haven't watched Rocky in a long time. Wow. But Alexander the Great, not Apollo Creed, was on his way to Egypt and said, we're going to destroy Jerusalem first. And I mean, the plan was destroy, kill everybody, everything, no hostages, no bounty. We're killing everything that lives, breathes, and moves, and we're burning the place to the ground. It had been a thorn in the side of far too many kings, and Alexander says, I'm through with it. And they're marching with his army towards Jerusalem, and some of the priests found out about it. You know, they have watchmen and things like that. They went into the head priest, whose name was Jaddua at that time, and Jaddua went to praying as soon as he heard that Alexander the Great was coming to destroy their city, and Jaddua received a message from God. So he put on all his priestly garments, got all his priests ready to go, and they marched out into the desert to meet Alexander the Great. I mean, think of that. Here is a bunch of priests armed with nothing more than their Torah scrolls, you know, and he's dressed in the whole 9 yards, you know, the ephod, the breastplate, the Urim and the Thummim, you know, the whole thing, the sash about them, and, you know, they're trudging through the desert, going out to meet the most fearsome military force the world had ever known. But it was because Jaddua had received a message from heaven. He knew. And this is kind of a tie-in back to our spiritual battle talk that we're talking about. Jaddua knew in his mind, or to the appearance of his eyes, that Alexander the Great was coming to attack him. Just like you sometimes think, oh, it's a demon coming to attack me. But Jaddua saw it through his spiritual eyes and said, no, this is an opportunity to create harmony and something that's going to carry us through. And if we can think in the same terms with what we call demons and devils, realize that it's not what it seems, we can benefit from it. So Jaddua goes out, and as soon as Alexander the Great sees him, Alexander the Great is reminded of a dream that he had, where he had seen Jaddua come to him before to present him a message from the great God that was contained in the Holy Scriptures. Now, he didn't know that it was going to be the Jewish folk. He didn't know that it was going to be the religion of the Jews that this was delivered to him from. But he just had been having a dream. And you need to understand something about the dreams of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was a great dreamer. Alexander the Great was an Edgar Cayce type person. One of the best dreams that he had, one of the best examples of what his dreams foretold, you know, back in the day when you got wounded, in those days, you got wounded with a sword, you got wounded with a spear. It was nasty. I mean, there wasn't, you know, antibiotics and, you know, all the modern technologies that we have today. So when you got wounded, it was bad, and infection was a huge issue. And infection was killing a lot of their soldiers, and a particular soldier that was Alexander the Great's friend, his name slips my mind. I could look it up in here, but I've been doing so much study about so many things, but at any rate, one of Alexander's buddies, who was one of his soldiers, was dying of an infection. And Alexander had a dream where a dragon, we won't even go into that, where a dragon showed him a particular plant. The dragon had the plant in his mouth, made it known to Alexander that this plant would bring healing. And so Alexander woke up, drew a picture of the plant, gave it to his doctors. They're like, oh yeah, we've seen this. They went, got the plant, made an ointment, a tincture, whatever it would be, of that plant, began treating wounds. Not only did Alexander the Great's buddy survive, but the death by wounds that got infected in the Greek army went to almost nil, because of something that came to Alexander the Great in a dream. Interesting. Now, another thing that came to Alexander the Great in a dream was that he was going to be visited by a holy man that would give him a message from God. Somehow Jaddua got this message from God, walked out into the desert. Alexander the Great saw him, instantly knew that he was the one that he had seen in his dream, and Jaddua showed Alexander the Great from the scriptures that he had been talked about. Alexander himself had been talked about, in the book of Daniel. And when Alexander the Great saw and learned that he was in fact talked about by the God of Jerusalem, well, why Alexander the Great spared Jerusalem. And not only did he spare Jerusalem, but he gave them lots of money and lots of gifts and things. He did it on an annual basis, and he also exempted them from taxes. So how does this all fit into the Apostle Paul? Well, when the folks in Jerusalem thought they were going to die, then all of a sudden they're rescued, they think, and spared and given great riches by a king named Alexander. Well, it started a great period in Judaism where they became Alexandrian. They had great interest in things Greek. They had great interest in things Alexandrian. They learned about the culture. They learned about the language. They learned about the religion. They learned about a lot of things that were Grecian, and they became Alexandrian. And out of that Alexandrian influence grew a group called the Herodians or the Hasmoneans, who ended up usurping the Maccabees, who were the rightful ancestral lineage rulers of Israel. And the Hasmoneans, the Herodians, ended up taking that over. And Herod the Great, who sat on the throne during the time of Jesus, was of the Hasmonean Herodian line. And one of his relatives was, you guessed it, ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner, the Apostle Paul was a Herodian. So going all the way back, and was a relative, that was hard to get to, a relative of King Herod, a very rare man that was Jewish and Roman, and he was the perfect guy to help them solve a problem that was both Jewish and Roman. So that's how Alexander the Great fit into bringing about the story of the Apostle Paul. And I just want to say this as we close. I know we could go on and on and on, but I'm going to go ahead and close this here pretty quickly. One thing needs to be spoken about the Apostle, quote-unquote, Paul. Because the honorific, the title, the term Apostle was never applied to Paul by anyone other than Paul in the entirety of Scripture, with one notable exception. The apostles of Jesus went out of their way to make sure that everyone knew that Paul was not an apostle. Paul went out of his way to argue in his letters that yes, he was an apostle. And it was kind of like, no, you're not. Yes, I am. No, you're not. Yes, I am. The New Testament is a back and forth battle between the forces of the original believers of Christ, those that walked with him, and Paul and his new ideas. And Paul was never called an apostle in the entirety of Scripture by anybody other than himself, with one notable exception. So get that in your mind. This Apostle Paul was not an Apostle Paul to anyone other than himself during the time of Jesus and his disciples. Now, the one place in the Bible where he is called an apostle is Revelation chapter 2, verse 2. And if you're familiar with the book of Revelation, you know that there's 7 churches addressed there. Of those 7 churches, one of them was founded by Paul. Well, Jeff, how can you say Paul was against Christ and Antichrist if the church that he founded is in the book of Revelation? How could you possibly say that? Well, the church that he founded was the church at Ephesus. And the way that he's addressed in the Bible was that John, quoting Jesus, says, "And to the church at Ephesus." That's the one that Paul created. And these letters were addressed to the apostles or the elders, the apostles of the church, the leaders, the founders. And it says, "To the church at Ephesus, you who have tested those that claim to be apostles, but were not." The only church founded by Paul in the discussion of the 7 churches was the church at Ephesus. And it clearly says, the apostle that founded you found out he was bogus. So, Paul was called an apostle once in the Bible, but he was called a false apostle because he was a false apostle. And I think we may just leave this up on the website and kind of do it step-by-step, talking about Apostle Paul Antichrist and along with all the other videos that we have up there. But if you want to know more about the book, ApostlePaulAntichrist.com. If you want to purchase the book, ApostlePaulAntichrist.com. And you can contact me in all of those various and sundry methods that I discussed before. Look over this once or twice. Think about what you're hearing. And I know it's new. I know it's different. It was difficult to give up the horse and buggy for some people. It was difficult to give up the Commodore 64 for some people. It was difficult to give up those brick phones. It was difficult for us to give up a lot of things that we thought were the cat's meow until we realized that there's a better way. I've got 20 years of experience in this. I'm offering you a better alternative. Try it or don't try it. But again, I ask you, how's your way working? Until next time, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, wishing you peace and light.